Hello, listeners. Today's episode of The Science of Self, your guide to inner transformation, falls on April 18th, 2025, a day filled with endless possibilities for self-improvement and growth. Are you ready to unlock your true potential and conquer those bad habits? Peter Hollins' book, Legendary Discipline, is like a secret weapon, showing how ancient Greek myths and modern-day heroes can inspire some serious self-control. With his book, you'll learn the tricks of the trade, from managing distractions to pursuing through pain, and discover just how far you can go when you truly believe in yourself. Today's episode is about the monkey's paw, an intriguing tale which serves as a creepy reminder some things are better left untouched. It's like a warning sign for those seeking easy routes, emphasizing how taking shortcuts can lead to unexpected and scary consequences. Imagine grabbing what seems like a harmless trinket, only to realize it's a portal to a world of troubles. The monkey's paw story is a friendly nudge to think twice before opting for quick fixes. Sometimes the journey is worth more than the destination. The Monkey's Paw and the Dangers of Shortcuts. This classic piece of literature is certainly not as old as the Greek myths we've already considered, but it nevertheless contains a theme of warning that wouldn't have been alien to the ancient Greeks. This short story, written by W. W. Jacobs in 1902, has been widely interpreted as a warning against using supernatural means to interfere with the wise hands of fate. There are actually several stories in more modern folklore that tackle the same themes, and the moral of them all seems to be encapsulated in the old adage, "Be careful what you wish for." The story, very briefly, goes like this. Mr. White and his son Herbert are playing chess one night when Sergeant Major Morris comes to visit them. He stays for dinner and afterwards shows them a fascinating artifact he found while serving in the British Army in India, a mummified monkey's paw. Morris explains that an Indian faker had placed a magical spell on the paw so that it would grant the owner 3 wishes. He also explains that the paw has brought him nothing but grief, and with that throws it into the fire. Morris warns Mr. White that using the 3 wishes only brings dire consequences, but Mr. White, intrigued and not heeding the warning, quickly retrieves the paw. Mr. White later decides to wish for the remaining amount left on his mortgage, the equivalent of around $30,000. The next morning, Herbert, the son, goes to work and is tragically killed in a machinery accident. The company denies responsibility but makes a payment to the family, a payment of roughly $30,000. The wishes come true, but in the most hideous form. Mrs. White, overcome with grief, demands that Mr. White use another wish to bring their son back. Can you see where this is going? He does so, and an hour later there's a knock at the door, and Mr. White immediately understands that the monster at the door is not really his son at all. He quickly makes the 3rd wish. The knocking outside stops. Mrs. White opens it to find nobody there, and screams out in anguish. Despite its horror elements, the story has a classical, mythical structure to it, with 3 wishes and an ill-considered tampering with fate, leading to a sort of punishment from the gods themselves. The Monkey's Paw will appeal to a modern audience because the lessons in it seem so relatable. Who hasn't wished for something, only to discover that it's not at all what they really wanted? Let's dig deeper to unravel the useful life lessons within this story. It is, like our previous 2 tales, a story of transgression and punishment. But what is the nature of Mr. White's crime? He's shown the monkey's paw and told repeatedly that it is dangerous and will result in dire consequences, but ignores these warnings entirely. Why? It's easy to imagine a few reasons. He's greedy and gets carried away with the endless possibilities, or he's desperate and sees in the paw a way out of his life troubles. Perhaps his failure to take Morris's warnings seriously shows a simple foolishness on his part. Why heed any caution when the prospect of getting everything you want is so close at hand? Whatever it is, Mr. White ignores the warnings, and at his own peril. His first wish is for something some might think trivial, given the seemingly unlimited magical power of the paw. He wishes for money, but doesn't say how this money will come into being. The horrifying consequence, his son dying in effect to produce this money, seems to be a kind of cosmic lesson in cause and effect. There is no such thing as a free lunch, and if the money were to really magically appear, it would need to come from somewhere. The menace we see from the monkey's paw seems to be a stern lesson. Life is as it is for a reason, and if you interfere without understanding what you're doing, you will only bring calamity on yourself. The theme repeats until the wishes are finished. Arguably, Mrs. White's wish is less selfish than her husband's, but she makes the fatal mistake of not learning from his mistake. Rather than destroying the paw there and then, they dig themselves further into the hole by making more wishes, and in the end, the only way to get out of the trouble is use the wishes completely and be worse off than they started. The characters in this story are not bad people, but they lack foresight or a greater vision. It's as though, ignorant of the complex webs of life behind their current situation, they wish for something that is unrealistic, undeserved, almost unnatural. Most of us have likely had thoughts of this kind. We wish we could win the lottery, or magically wake up one morning with the body of our dreams and 10 years younger, or get a lucky break and become famous overnight. But all these wishes are the antithesis of carefully considered mature goals that are worked out in the real world while obeying natural laws. The warning against messing with fate is a profound one. It tells us that we don't always understand why things are as they are, and so cannot always get what we want. In our limited human perspective, it's unwise to pout and wish for reality to be something else, especially when we have no real understanding of the mechanisms underlying this reality. We are not meant to play God and toy with the universe of which we are only a part. A popular Buddhist fable has the same lesson. A farmer one day loses his only horse, and his neighbor says, "How unfortunate for you." But the farmer only replies, maybe not, we'll see." Later the horse comes back, and following it is another, better horse. The neighbor now says, "How fortunate for you." And again the farmer replies, maybe not, we'll see." Later, the farmer's son is injured trying to train this new horse, and the neighbor again chips in, saying how unlucky the farmer is. The farmer only says, maybe not, we'll see." Sometime later, war is declared, and every young man drafted to serve. However, the farmer's son, being injured, is exempt and can stay home, surely saving his life. Again, the neighbor congratulates the farmer and says how lucky he is, and the farmer, in his wisdom, only smiles and says, maybe not, we'll see." The moral of this story is obvious. In our limited perspective, we're never truly in the position to say whether events or circumstances are fortunate or unfortunate, good or bad. Some calamities later turn out to be blessings in disguise, and some gifts are later understood as curses. Many people say that their most painful life challenges taught them the most about life, and many people discover, with little time and wisdom, that what they thought they wanted brought them no happiness at all. It's this strictly human limitation on perspective that makes us so ill-equipped to decide fate is wrong and that we know better. Just as a child who is given the power to decide what to have for dinner might foolishly decide on 4 bowls of ice cream and be sick, we can't always know the best course for life to take in the grand scheme of things. How do we take the lessons from the monkey's paw and put them into practice in real life, though? None of us, thankfully, have access to a magical yet cursed item that gives us whatever our heart desires. At the end of such stories, the characters have learnt their lessons. There's a heavy load of regret and the feeling now that they should have left things just as they were. In our own lives, it's important to be realistic and as mature as possible when it comes to deciding our grand dreams and wishes for ourselves. Again, this takes a degree of restraint and self-discipline. On a wild whim, we might decide that what we really want is to go and live off-grid in the forest somewhere, only to go and find ourselves dangerously unprepared and with all our illusions of that way of life completely shattered. On the other hand, many of us will look at a challenge or a failure in our lives and rail against it, calling it a mistake or a punishment that we don't deserve. But is it really? The monkey's paw tale reminds us that human beings have limitations, and that it's always better to stick to your realm of control rather than overreach into the supernatural, or, in more practical terms, the overly ambitious, unethical, or unrealistic. What is our appropriate realm of control? Well, we can always make goals and plans to the best of our knowledge, work hard and honestly to achieve those, and adapt as we go along and learn more. We can have the wisdom and maturity to look at the events in our life and withhold judgment, like the Buddhist farmer. Maybe it's a blessing, maybe not. Who's to say? Like Mr. and Mrs. White, when they play God without knowing what they're doing, the results are monstrous. On a basic level, it's always prudent to hold off on interfering with things you don't understand, especially those that come with explicit warnings. An obvious example is a student who takes an illicit drug to help him cram before an exam, without any care of the inevitable side effects coming his way. Rather than approaching the problem in the normal way, studying and doing his best, he tries to cheat and uses a tool he doesn't understand or respect and suffers the consequences. We can see echoes of this moral in stories of people being bitterly disappointed to find that the proverbial grass is not in fact greener on the other side, and that there is no way to magically find a shortcut through life. The classic stories of making a deal with the devil are a similar warning. We're lured by the promise of money or fame or luxury, and in our blindness and ignorance, we barge ahead, not reading the fine print, i.e., that we have sold our souls to get what we wanted. In myths and stories, the person cutting a supernatural deal is always burnt in the end, sometimes on a technicality, like in the monkey's paw, or sometimes because what the person thought they wanted is soon discovered to be awful, like King Midas, who quickly realizes what a stupid idea it is to turn everything you touch to gold. In our lives, we can become adept at using self-discipline and restraint when we develop goals and dreams. Can we routinely ask what it is we think we want and be honest about why? Are we acting because we hope to find some kind of cheat code to the game of life? Are we letting ourselves be deceived by something that promises us our wildest dreams without stopping to understand exactly what that means? This could apply to pyramid schemes and poor investments, or to being suspicious of romantic or business partners who promise the world, or to gurus or coaches who claim you can have whatever you want with no effort. Self-discipline is having the presence of mind to think carefully before your own greed or desire runs away with you. Just like in the Daedalus and Icarus story, the best path is seldom the flashiest one, but more often goes along with ordinary, consistent hard work and an unfailing eye on the goal, despite temptations or flashy promises that end up being worse for you in the long run. It's a lesson in good sense. The monkey's paw is, on some level, just a fun, spooky tale. But on another level, it's a very deep warning to let go of a foolish desire to boss the universe around. Instead, it's better to cultivate a mature acceptance of life and its hardships, especially those we don't like or understand. Suffering is inevitable, and trying to avoid it never works, or even leads to more suffering. Actions undertaken without any proper understanding of what you're doing can't be expected to work and, at worst, can be dangerous. Rather than foolishly wishing for things to be different, take a wiser, broader view and resist the urge to decide prematurely what's best. On the most practical level, a wonderful lesson is simply to be patient. Sometimes things resolve themselves merely by you waiting without acting. What was a problem reveals itself in time to be an integral part of a bigger process. Wisdom and self-discipline teach us that interfering in these bigger processes can only lead to trouble. Hercules and the 12 labors and embracing hardship. Even those unfamiliar with Greek mythology will recognize the name Hercules and the 12 near-impossible feats of strength and bravery he was assigned to complete. But few know why Hercules labored on these tasks and what the deeper lesson of the story is. Context matters here. Hercules was born of Zeus, as so many were. He was a busy deity. However, he was only a demigod, since his mother was Alcmene, a mortal. Zeus was married to the goddess Hera at the time, who was so enraged that she vowed to destroy Hercules, the incarnation of her husband's infidelity. To take revenge, she sent snakes to the baby Hercules' crib, but the boy, showing incredible strength, simply killed the snakes. He grew to be a strong, successful man who later married and had 3 strong sons. Jealous and angry at his success, Hera upped the ante and caused the adult Hercules to fall into an insanity that caused him to kill his own children and wife, Megara. Once the insanity lifted, Hercules was overcome with grief. He sought the counsel of wise Apollo, who told him that to redeem himself, he must serve Eurystheus, the king of Tyrants. Unfortunately, Hera found a way to sneakily suggest that the king assign impossible tasks that would surely kill Hercules. He had to slay a 9-headed Hydra monster. He had to kill the fierce Nemean lion, capture the Erymanthian boar and the Cretan bull, obtain the belt of Hippolyta, and several other dangerous or near impossible feats. For posterity, the rest of the 12 labors of Hercules were as follows: capture the stag of Arcadia, clean the cattle stables of King Augeas of Elis, shoot the carnivorous birds of the Stymphalian marshes, capture the mad bull of the island of Crete, capture the man-eating mares of King Diomedes of the Bistones, take the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, steal the cattle of the 3-bodied giant Geryon of the island of Erythia, retrieve the golden apples at the world's end guarded by Hesperides, fetch from the underworld the 3-headed dog Cerberus, guardian of the gates of the underworld. No small feats. Astonishingly, Hercules achieved all the tasks, one by one, with his strength, determination, and cunning, and a little help from others along the way. Hercules continued to have many escapades after completing his missions, and the ferocious Hera never quite stopped trying to trick, destroy, or humiliate him. But eventually, the gods were so impressed with Hercules' strength that they elevated him to a full god. What can we learn from poor Hercules' seemingly never-ending life troubles and dramas? Like other mythical figures, consider the biblical Job, who similarly has misfortune after misfortune thrown his way. He seems to embody the occasional human suspicion that there's a vengeful God out there constantly trying to mess with us. Sometimes it feels like life is just one difficulty after another. The myth of Hercules teaches us that we are all, in a way, demigods. We have a weaker, fearful, and mortal human side, but also a stronger, wiser, godlike aspect that can help us triumph over any adversity, if we can follow it, rather than give in to the temptation to give up. In fact, Hercules does face this very decision in a lesser-known story from his childhood. The story of Kakia and Arete tells us a lot about what the myth of Hercules is really all about. It goes like this. In Hercules' youth, he was confronted by 2 very different goddesses. The first was beautiful, alluring Kakia, who offered Hercules a life of easy pleasure. Though she told him she was called happiness, her name actually means vice. Kakia promised a path that was free of pain and hard work, and was filled instead with pleasure and delight, i.e., the easy way. You can guess how Arete compared. She was a humble, quiet goddess who told Hercules that her path was the only way to genuine happiness and achievement, but it would be long and difficult, even painful at times. Her message was simple. Nothing worthwhile in the world was to be gained without hard work and effort. Pleasure and wisdom had a price, which the wise man understood and paid willingly. Her promise was only that if Hercules wanted to achieve great things, he must learn to master those skills, and he must work for what he wanted, and in laboring for them, they would be worth so much more. Her name meant virtue and suggested a life path that was slower, more steadfast, but ultimately the best hope at a good moral existence, i.e., real happiness. Arete's path was the hard way. By his conduct throughout his life, we already know which path Hercules ultimately chose. By going the way of virtue instead of vice, He set himself up for mountains of hard work, pain, suffering, discomfort, difficulty. But he also paved the way for himself as a hero and future god, none of which would have been possible if he had shrunk away from challenge or given up when faced with adversity. So in reading the story of Hercules, we needn't feel sorry for him and the constant attacks from Hera. Rather, these are trials that only strengthen the already powerful Hercules. Rather than his adversity disrupting a life path that was meant to be easy and pleasurable, the struggle was the very cause of his later success and contentment. Hercules went along with his 12 labors willingly. That he did so can teach us a lot about ourselves and our own inner demons. Hercules teaches us first that a bad start in life doesn't have to be the end of the world. He truly had the cards stacked against him. He was a child of an affair and had someone out to kill him from the day of his birth. But he had other things in his favor, which he capitalized on. He was still a demigod and was raised to develop and strengthen his talents despite his origins and difficulties. In Hercules' very nature, we see the two potential paths, the option for the easier, more mediocre life, or the chance at greatness, at godlike achievement, and all the heroic deeds it would demand of him. Hercules teaches us another lesson that is perhaps less common in modern times than it was in ancient Greece. Life is hard. Even when you're a half-god, life is still difficult and dangerous and uncomfortable and chaotic. It doesn't matter that Hercules has superhuman strength. Even he is tested to the limits of his abilities. So it doesn't really make a difference what gifts or advantages we possess. Life will always push us to those limits and demand we step up and be even better. These lessons, however, will never be easy. They will take grit and determination, since they'll come in the form of struggle, disappointment, and challenge. It's a matter of attitude. If we expect that life should be easy, we will be dismayed when it inevitably isn't. We'll see the challenges that come our way as mistakes or unwanted barriers in our path that should lead us directly and easily to the finish line. It's a perspective, in other words, that guarantees we will give up, lose faith, or resort to blame when we cannot achieve the things we want for ourselves. But if we acknowledge that life is not easy and never will be, and perhaps that it shouldn't be, then we can adopt the attitude of finding ways through and around troubles, with us coming out the other end strengthened and ennobled. Nothing that is truly valuable is given for free. And in life, the best things of all are often those things that you've won and earned for yourself, with blood, sweat, and tears. There's never an easy way out. But knowing this, we can not only endure hardships, but actually embrace them, grateful for the opportunity to test and prove ourselves, to dig deep, and show ourselves what we're made of. Anyone can succeed in easy times, but it takes character and active effort to prove yourself in the hard times. The success won in these hard times will be infinitely more valuable than reaching the end of an easy life with nothing much to show for it. It's also important to remember that life's struggles never really go away. Hera never stops pursuing Hercules. She's taken as a fact of life. But just like iron can be strengthened and made sharper in a forge of fire, or by being run along an even sharper sword, our adversities can sometimes be our training partners, the very force in life that challenges us to be better. This force will always be there. We're on our path, and suddenly things don't go to plan. There's an obstacle in the road, an enemy, a misfortune, or accident. And after that, there's another one. It's not the presence of these obstacles, but how we respond to them that will determine the quality of our success. The easy path of avoiding troubles and seeking only pleasure may feel good in the moment, but it weakens a person. Willpower can be thought of as a muscle. When it's not exercised, it withers. The promise of a good, easy life is ultimately an illusion because nothing is for free, and one way or another we pay for it. In forfeiting the challenge, in running away, avoiding hardship, blaming others, or failing to rise to the challenge, we actually impoverish ourselves and pass up a golden opportunity to become more than what we currently are. The goddess Arete is the perfect personification of this idea. Discipline, sacrifice, humble hard work, and a virtuous life can seem plain and unexciting in the moment, but reap massive rewards later on. The flashy goddess Kakia promises a lot, but is all talk. When it comes down to it, she's only offering a life of shame and pointlessness. The easy life is nothing to be proud of because it doesn't teach us anything. It doesn't inspire the best from us. In other words, it's cheap because it costs us nothing. Sometimes we can look at amazing and accomplished figures and not see them for what they really are. We can envy those who are smarter, wealthier, more attractive, or more talented, and want their life, perhaps because we imagine that it's so much easier to be them. But the truth is, nobody is spared hard work and difficulty in life, and in fact, those that do well in life often experience more adversity because they welcome it into their lives as a teacher. Hercules was naturally very strong, but his feats were never easy, never any less frightening or difficult than they would be for anyone else. In fact, we can be grateful that in comparison, our challenges are so much less daunting than poor Hercules. Many of the individuals in our book have faced difficulties that actually go beyond the normal lot of human suffering. These are the people who preach inner strength, commitment, hard work, discipline, and all the rest. Isn't it curious that those we consider most successful in these cases often actually faced more challenge and adversity than the average person? It makes you wonder how much this average person could achieve with their relatively small portion of troubles if they only adopted the attitude of Viktor Frankl, Thomas Edison, or Hercules. Heroes, or gods of all kinds, both modern and ancient, have all the same fears and weaknesses, but the difference is that they don't allow their fear and weakness to be in the driving seat. The path is taken willingly. The feeling of valor, pride, and satisfaction at the end of life is directly proportional to how much one was able to achieve in the face of hardship. There are no accolades awarding for taking the easy path, i.e., big monsters, big prizes. Each of us is half human, half God, since we have free will and possess the potentiality to be either exceptional or ordinary. Adversity is the arena where we prove to ourselves which aspect we will develop, which path we will go down. Each of us is confronted by Kakia and Arate, by the choice to take the easy or the difficult route, sometimes several times a day. But instead of imagining that life has thrown you a curveball and been unfair, look at your struggles for what they really are, invitations to be better. Hey there, podcast listeners. We hope you enjoyed diving into the world of self-discipline and drawing inspiration from mythology with Peter Hollins' book. In this episode, we explored how taking a step back and adopting a patient approach can often be the wisest course of action. Instead of rushing to judgment or acting impulsively, embracing patience allows us to see the bigger picture and trust that some things will work themselves out in due time. It's a powerful reminder that our interventions aren't always necessary and that sometimes the best move is no move at all. So, as you navigate life's challenges, remember to resist the urge to decide prematurely. Trust the process, stay disciplined, and embrace the wisdom of doing nothing when needed. After all, as Peter Hollins says, impatience is a form of violence.